listening to Count Richard von Coudenhove Kalergi. Today is Friday the 6th of April, and a rather wet April shower-filled day it is too. And here's a couple of comments since my last video. There was a picture in the Irish Times there last week taken in the Hydro Hotel, which is owned by Marcus White, and he was welcoming some Ukrainians to Lisdoonvarna, which already has 800 Ukrainians there, never mind the 100 people in direct provision there already. But what struck me about the picture was a lady in the photograph was wearing a veil. Now I did a search for the demographics of the Ukraine, and it turns out that 88% of Ukrainians are actually Christian, and 0.7 of 1% would be Islamic. So it would appear to me that we may be getting a lot of that 0.7%, and I suspect there must be a roaring trade in black market Ukrainian passports. Also during the week, the Swedish Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson said in an interview that integration of immigrants had failed and fueled gang crime, parallel societies. Something that I think people in this country need to keep in mind with the Céad Míle Fáilte. And also this, you think this from a country that back in 2019 had to declare a hand grenade amnesty due to the level of violence. Now during the week there, in the week of Easter Sunday, violence was sparked by the burning of the Quran in Malmo by a Danish politician called Rasmus Paludan, and the subsequent violence resulted in over 100 police cars, 100 policemen being injured, and 20 police cars destroyed. And Sweden took in 1.3 million people in a 10-year period, and resulted in a population now of at least 20% foreign-born, similar to Ireland, which back in the year 2000 had 3% foreign-born, as now somewhere around 18%. Never mind the illegals that are here, plus the amnesty declared by Claire Byrne to 17,000 people. So, and also since January of this year, 3 times the amount of people applied for asylum in Ireland than did in 2020. And to keep in mind that each one of those that is granted residency can bring in 20 family members. Now during the week, Kiev, the Ukrainian government announced that the story of the ghost of Kiev, the nickname given to a MiG-29 Fulcrum fighter pilot who allegedly shot down 6 Russian aircraft in one day on the 24th of February, March, when the invasion first started, and credited at one stage with over 40 aerial victories. But as I said, this turned out to be a fake story. But interestingly, in World War II, there was a fighter pilot by the name of Emil Lang, who shot down 18 Soviet aircraft in one day in 4 combat missions on the battle for Kiev, and that took place on the 3rd of November in 1943. Now the term ace originated back to the First World War, and a French fighter pilot called Adolphe Pijou, and he shot down 5 aircraft in July in 1915. Now interestingly, that gentleman Lang eventually shot down 173 aircraft before being killed on the 3rd of September 1944 when his Focke-Wulf 190 aircraft developed engine trouble and crashed. Now another fighter pilot by the name of Erich Hartmann, who shot down, he was the greatest combat ace, shot down 352 aircraft, including 11 Russian aircraft, on the 24th of August 1944, and he was after the war he was sentenced for war crimes to 25 years in prison, and eventually served 10 years, and died in 1993. I just thought I'd throw in the history aspect, as you know I always like to throw in a bit of history. Also, Spain has announced that it's sending a ship, the Isabel. It's a roughly a car ferry sized vessel with 200 tons of weaponry to Ukraine, and that left Spain on the 25th of April and is now in the North Sea. Now, I tracked it as of yesterday, but today a search on my marine traffic app reveals that the ship is actually gone. So they've obviously turned off, hidden it from public view. Also in Ukraine, a major embarrassment that retired Canadian Lieutenant General Trevor Kaju has been caught by the Russian forces around Mariupol trying to escape. So it'll be interesting to see if Putin has him up for a trial. It'll be very interesting to see that. He was 30 years. He wore the Canadian uniform before retiring in the 5th of April of this year. So strange that he ended up in Ukraine. Also, I did a check with that ship that I like, the Yakov Gavel, and that's back in Sabita, which is in the Yamal Peninsula. And just to give you an idea of the geographic of its location, the sunrise there was at 1:45 in the morning, and the sunset will be 11:15 tonight. And the daylight at each day extends 20 minutes, and the lunchtime temperature today was -8. So we think we have it bad here. But interestingly, the Gazprom, the company that supplies gas to Europe, has now opened up a bank, and it appears to be that 10 European countries have opened up accounts with that bank, and they need 2 accounts, one in euros and one in rubles. So they pay the bank in the euros to get the shipment of gas, which is then converted into rubles. So even though they're breaking their sanctions, it appears to be that it's not, it's being permitted. And I think Hungary was one of the first countries to avail of that. And also in the corruption index in the world, Ukraine ranks 117 out of 180 countries, with Zambia, Niger and Bolivia coming worse than it. And I noticed during the week there was a report out of Iceland that in 2020 there was 9 stillborn babies, and that nearly doubled to 17 since the rollout of the vaccine. Now, that pub we just passed there now is called Johnny Fox's Pub, which is the highest pub in Ireland, in a lovely little town called Glencullen. Also in Israel, they have has also had a 33% increase in stillborn amongst the vaxxed women. And I'm reminded of the film The Usual Suspects, where the quote was, "The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was to convince people that he never existed." But I heard an interesting version of that one, and that is, the greatest trick that the CDC ever pulled was to convince well people that they were sick, and that the second greatest trick was to convince people that Fauci was a good guy. Well, there are my thoughts, which are my own. Thanks very much for listening. Good afternoon, good luck, and God bless, and God save Ireland.